The Locarno Film Festival hosted this year an art exhibition with the work of the director Tsai Ming Liang at the Rivellino Art Space. The exhibition was curated by Kevin Billy, Locarno Film Festival professor for the future of cinema and audiovisual arts at the Università della Svizzera Italiana. Giuseppe Di Salvatore and Ruth Bettig from Film Explorer met him to discuss his role at the festival, his relationship to the future of cinema, and how the work of Tsai Ming Liang inspires us to coexist with the moment.
So every year I get to invite one guest to make such an installation and also have a conversation about the future of cinema. And this year I wanted to invite Tsai Ming Liang because my own relationship to the question of future has changed in the last year since I started this job. Let's just say I was much more. I took the job title quite literally. That I was very focused on the future and really trying to answer this question. And if you remember last year at the festival, we had this 24-hour talk about the future of cinema, which was a pretty extraordinary event. But also, I think this event also exemplified something about the future, that it's something that you're always chasing after, and you're in many ways trying to defy natural time. You're trying to enter a different temporality than what might be considered a natural state of time. And after a while, this becomes quite exhausting and I would say also unsustainable. And so in this year, I've had to reconsider my own assumptions or expectations about the future and my own relationship to the future in a way that I feel can be more sustainable and more human. And so thinking about this new relationship to time and thinking about future as something that we can actually experience now rather than to keep looking forward to or anticipating, I really thought about the movies of Tsai Ming Liang as a great example of cinema today that grounds us in a very strong and contemplative and deep relationship to time. So this convinced me that I should invite Tsai Ming Liang to come to Locarno this year.
So that's why you were speaking about future and futurism and the reflection about future. What is exactly destabilizing and anxious in speaking about future?
It depends. I guess it depends on what moment you ask me this question, because yeah, it can also be a sign of great excitement, enthusiasm, a state of energy that exceeds or surpasses the capacity of the present to contain it, that it needs extra time in order to fulfill itself. And so, this is the energy of entrepreneurs or dreamers, people whose energies and their thoughts go beyond the present moment. And without such energies, we wouldn't have this thing called progress that brings our society into new states. And so for the longest time I was basically educated to look up to such people, especially growing up in the United States, inventors and entrepreneurs, disruptors. That was a big catchword in the 2010s with social media and technology, bringing new possibilities and really a kind of critique of the status quo as being stagnant and oppressive and keeping us trapped in the way things are. But I think as exciting as it is to think in those terms, I'm not sure if it makes sense to always be thinking in those terms. I think to have a real appreciation of what the future can bring, you also have to have a deep appreciation of what the present is and what the present can bring you as well. And I think after chasing these questions about the future for the past year, it's made me actually value qualities of being in a present state that, I now want to pay more attention to. I've had exposure to people who call themselves futurists, and they're very good at creating a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of hype around things that, you know, are not yet among us but are coming. But at the same time, if you spend so much time in this way of thinking, I think it does destabilize your appreciation of where things are now, and that there are certain things about life as it is that are worth appreciating, worth recognizing, worth embracing. So, and I think it's also, I also noticed that to keep in this dream state of speculation, at some point you kind of ask yourself, well, okay, if this is what you keep imagining for the future, well, what would it take to actually bring it about? And this is where I find that these futurists and these innovators, they tend to pass on the hard work of bringing out this future to others, such that it becomes a bit of a burden or a real labor problem, both in terms of the resources required. If you look at a lot of tech companies in the last 10 years, they actually exploited the existing infrastructure, such as internet systems or mail systems. If you look at Amazon, the way that Amazon and Netflix became profitable was that they just utilized the existing delivery system of the mail, the postal mail, when Netflix was delivering DVDs to your mailbox, or the internet. And they didn't have to pay for these services. They just used what was there. Yeah, so I think that there's a lot of exploitation of existing resources and labor that futurism takes advantage of. And so making observations about this, I've become much more sensitive to these questions of responsibility, that I find that futurists can tend to be rather irresponsible. And in many ways, what makes them so seductive is that they can make us temporarily forget about responsibility, because they keep proposing a kind of utopian dream, this kind of escapist appeal of something that's so magical that it will just appear and you can just enjoy it. But I think things always have a price, and one should really be aware of the material reality and the price of such dreams. So again, it makes me think back to films of Tsai Ming-liang, because his films really show the reality of people who are seemingly trapped in moments. You see them cooking or working or just walking down a street in a way that just feels very grounded and very concrete. And I think many viewers, when they watch Tsai Ming-liang's films, they might feel a bit trapped, like, oh, could this go faster? Could we have something happen, please? But I think he really insists on keeping you in this moment so that you eventually do reach a state of a greater sense of sensitivity to what this moment is and what it means to actually coexist with this moment, rather than just to keep moving on to another moment. So again, it's a question of our relationship to time. And I think Tsai Ming-liang has a lot to teach us about how we can relate to time.
It's exactly also what you were saying about the human behind the technology, the human dimension. And probably a question will be also if in this futurism, this probably also depends of youth and a certain glorification of youth. Youth is the moment of possibilities, of imagining the future, etc. We are also a bit victim of a sort of smartness. I mean, you're going to organize also an event about intelligences. I have the impression that we have also to cover event or discuss about films with the smart solution, the smartest possible solution. And what I learned, for example, 2 days ago, in hearing also Tsai Ming-liang speaking, is this place left open to what we don't know, what can happen, or to the other. And there is something that is not necessarily smart, not necessarily intelligent, but it's just probably a way to hear the other. And so are we sometime also victim of smartness?
Well, I think in his case, he's smart enough to appreciate the value of instinct and intuition, that sometimes it's not about having a concrete answer for how his film should be directed within a particular scene, what to tell the actors to do, or what exactly to capture in the moment, but to actually listen to the moment. And I think it takes a lot of intelligence to be a good listener. As you know, you don't have to be speaking the answers to every question, but actually be listening to what the moment is presenting to you. I think that requires a lot of intelligence. You know, you can, and I'd like to call this a conversational, not just a conversational, but a cinematic intelligence. This is something that when we were proposing this event of the future of intelligence, it was, yes, very clearly inspired by this whole hype around AI. Okay, so artificial intelligence is the thing that everyone else is talking about, but are there other intelligences, like you said, that we should be also valuing so that we're not being caught up in this hype? So, you know, there's environmental intelligence, there's social intelligence, there's emotional intelligence. But since this is a film festival, we shouldn't forget about cinema. And I think about what do we think about intelligence as it relates to cinema? And by this I don't mean just having smart things to say about movies, knowing the historical or cultural background. I mean, that's knowledge, but I think intelligence is this question of what do you do with knowledge in order to produce a deeper sense of meaning or purpose or relevance with film. So yeah, it leaves it quite open, and it's this question of what can images and sounds, how do they relate with our minds, our mental states, what thoughts can the use of image and sound produce. So with Simon Liang, for example, I think it's quite clear that his use of image and sound and moments, they do provoke a lot of questions and a lot of thinking, even though on the surface they seem very simple. You know, there's almost no camera movement in his films. They take place in often rather empty settings, but somehow that emptiness creates a lot of space for a mind to enter and to process what it's interacting with. So again, it seems rather counterintuitive that he seems to do so much less, quote unquote, than a so-called smart filmmaker would do. But I think this is exactly what makes him intelligent, because he knows exactly how much or how little he needs to do.
The question of doing less was very important in the discussion, the conversation with Simon Liang. At the same time, I was just asking myself, okay, if you are, for example, for young people, I mean, you work as we are bigger, you teach, in our cinematic environment can be difficult just to do less, in the sense, if you have a stage, if you're already an authority or you have a sort of credibility and publicity already, doing less can be valued and can be shared, can be, but for a young person, for example, is it really a message to say to do less?
Oh, I think this would resonate a lot with young people. In my experience as a teacher, there seems to be a perpetual anxiety to have to do more, and I think there is a wish to be given permission to do less, even if they are not completely convinced that it's okay. But there is definitely a desire, and I definitely feel this among students, that if it made sense to do less, they would be happy to do so. And so maybe this is a job of whether it's an artist or an educator, because it does seem to be counterintuitive to what society and culture is conditioning us to believe, whether because of hypercapitalism always wanting us to produce more, to be more productive, or things like social media and entertainment always wanting us to consume more, to always, skip or click to the next thing to experience, or to be fed more things through the algorithmic recommendation feed, or to always be posting some new update on social media so that you don't get forgotten. It's definitely a kind of mania for more. And I think at some point it actually does make sense that to experience something refreshing and different from what's normal and what's kind of unsatisfying because it's become so normalized is actually to do the opposite. So yeah, this will happen. I don't know to what extent it will happen in a big way. I think COVID was kind of a preview of what could happen if everyone was put in a position where they had to do less. And I think it was rather traumatic for a lot of people. But it could also be a good preview or a good training for how we could get used to doing less. I also think it's going to be increasingly a necessity to do less, because for me, one of the biggest problems of our civilization right now is climate change and the type of destruction being caused on the environment because of human activity, human consumption, human waste, human energy expenditure, and carbon emissions. And at some point, I don't think it takes too much mathematics or rocket scientists to just see that one of the biggest ways to stop this crisis from being worse is to do less. It's just a question of how we as a society can learn to do that. And bringing it back to cinematic intelligence, this is why I think movies could still have a role to play if they could be among the most important cultural forms that can deal with this question of how can we imagine the way we can live in the future and really demonstrate this, allow us to see and feel what that looks like. And again, it goes back to Tsai Ming-liang. I think we talked about this a little bit in the talk yesterday, that he could be seen as an ecological filmmaker in the way that his protagonists interact with the environment, and they live in their worlds through the most modest and minimalist means. And there's something very moving and touching, but also heroic about this. And it may seem that they're living in a state of poverty at some times, but I think it's more important to think about it as not living in poverty, but living in necessity. And I think in the future, we're all going to have to live in a more necessary way. You know what I mean? A way that really is clinging to what's necessary in our lives, so that we're not producing so much waste.
Remaining in this topic of doing less, I mean, festivals are also places where normally there are a lot of pressure to do more and more. Actually, not necessarily from the directors, but more from the sponsors and etc. And so you asked 2 days ago a very interesting question to Tsai Ming-liang, speaking about the new president of Locarno Film Festival, Maya Hoffman, and you asked, so what would you like to say to Maya Hoffman concerning the festival in general, I think. So now I ask you, what you would like to say to Maya Hoffman?
Well, Maya Hoffman is a much more accomplished individual than I am, so I'm not sure what I could really offer. But at the same time, I have a job that I guess is supposed to offer some perspectives. I think, the things that I've been talking with you about, I mean, I believe in them, so I think these are the same things I would say to her, that we need to take a very clear-eyed look at where our civilization is going and what are the forces that are driving it, and then to think about how our film festival can address these issues through its programming and through its activities, whether it's the films that we program or the things that we do in the festival, in the Piazza Grande, or also online, that are really addressing the biggest questions and challenges and issues of our time. This, to me, is the way that we stay relevant as a cultural institution and as something that's very valuable for the public. I think it's actually quite simple.
Tsai Ming-liang had also an interesting answer, or a sort of answer, because it was more a discourse, speaking a lot about this mixed format between cinema movie or cinema theater, movie theater, and art space, that there will be more interexchangeability or the possibility to pass from one to the other. And so this sort of permeability between movie theater and art space will be also something to wish to Locarno Film Festival?
Well, with Maya Hoffman as the president, it certainly raises this possibility, because she's so established in the art world. So I would be very interested to see how she approaches that question. I mean, it automatically comes to mind because she has a foot in both worlds as a film producer and as someone who's established as a gallerist and curator and figure in the art world. So so I think, given what Tsai Ming-liang said yesterday, that we shouldn't see these different worlds as being separate or walled from each other, and we should explore the ways that they talk to each other and the way that they might actually inspire each other, and we can open up spaces that are different from the traditional, well, what they call in the museum, they call it the black box, but we just call it the movie theater. That maybe we can, open up a bigger world of diverse possibilities for how to experience a film. I think what the gallery provides us is a way of experiencing films that's not about sitting in front of a movie for 2 hours, but actually being able to engage with the moving images with our own moving bodies, that, you know, we can draw closer to the image, we can go further, we can move around it. This to me is a very exciting way to think about what cinema can do. So then it becomes a question of how much diversity can we encompass in our programs, how many different spaces can we allow so that it makes sense and that they're actually not conflicting with each other, so that people get mixed signals like, okay, am I supposed to experience a film like a 2-hour movie in a chair or moving around? That actually you can experience these different things, and that each of these different experiences brings out something new, and that's what makes it so great. So if we can embrace the possibility and the opportunity of this kind of diversity in our programming and make it in such a way that the audience can engage with it, understand it, appreciate it, and explore it, then I think we'll have done a really good job. With Tsai Ming-liang, you have someone who is a world-class auteur who's been making films since the early 90s, but now actually sees himself as much an artist as a filmmaker. And he's just as happy to show his films and his works in the Pompidou as in the Berlinale or the Locarno Film Festival. And so that kind of openness, I think, is very inspiring. And some of the things he was saying yesterday, that, you know, he likes to put his movies in the cinema and his movies in the gallery and his video art in the cinema. I think that's a very playful kind of instinct. And if the audience could share or follow that instinct as well, that they can be playful in their own experience and just try different things out with how they encounter images, this just gives the festival a whole new life as a place to experience films. It's still in the process of being formed, because we still have one more day, and till yesterday he was still creating new work. Not just videos, but also paintings. So he was actually creating like 4 new paintings in the white box, the white wall gallery in the upstairs of the Rivellino. And then yesterday he was placing them inside the Rivellino fortress around the 2 projection screens that will be showing his moving image work. So it's not just about moving images, it's about painting and portraits. And it will be really interesting to see how these different formats of moving image and painting that are all created by him will be arranged, and what kind of overall vision they present. It's also interesting that it's happening in such a short time, and then I'm not sure how long it will run. It's only expected to be on display until the end of the festival, and then we don't know exactly if it will remain or if we'll have to close it down. And that's something that's very interesting about putting an exhibition inside of a film festival, because the time is so limited. It's, because exhibitions are usually put up and they last for many weeks or months. So then it raises this question of the practicality or the cost. And of course, there are many artists who would not be so interested in producing something that's only on display for 2 weeks or 11 days. But in the case of Tsai Ming-liang, he actually found it very fascinating to have an opportunity that was so ephemeral, so limited. And again, it's about someone who appreciates what time is, that time is not something that, is with us forever, but has a limitation. And if you appreciate the limitations of the time and embrace it and just use it as a moment for you to express something, knowing that it can only be experienced for a limited time, that actually puts so much more consideration into what it is that you want to express, knowing that it only has a short period to be seen and heard. So I think those of us who will visit the Rivellino in these days will be quite fortunate to encounter this expression.
We'll have to take advantage of this presence.
Yes, exactly.
And probably it's a performative attitude, the attitude of performers.
Yeah.
Probably has something to do with his being also a theater person.
You're absolutely right, because this was his original training, that he was a theater student before he started making films. And I think theater gives you an even stronger sense of the ephemeral, that you give a performance and then that's it, and then you do it again, and then you do it again, and each time it's different, and each time it goes away, except in whatever memories can be held in the minds of the spectators. So this very much is a clear quality in his work.
You are in contact with the new generation. We can say that new normal is to look at movie images on a smartphone or in a format that is something like a smartphone. From this point of view, it would be interesting to say that the old notion of cinema expanded actually applied to the old movie theaters. So actually cinema expanded, what we normally consider as cinema is today something like cinema expanded.
Okay, so you mean that smartphones and other things
are the new normal?
Yeah. I mean, this is what I had proposed when I gave my talk for this position, and it surprises me how many people still don't consider this, that we are living in a cinema of every day, and that we're not just living in it, but we produce it ourselves. And if you ever consider that when someone is posting a video on Instagram or TikTok, that they are engaging in something like a filmmaking activity, and they are producing something like a cinema, that it's something that we just do as an everyday activity. This wasn't always the case. In the past we were consumers just going to the cinema to receive images, but now we're also responsible for the production of them and the circulation of them. But I guess the big question is more, how does this new cinema of the everyday, that is personalized, that is distributed, that is ubiquitous, that's somewhere between the spectacle of the big screen, at least in many cases it has something of the magic that you would in the past associate only with going to the movies, but now you see things on social media that are quite impressive and bizarre and fascinating. How do you relate all of that everyday magic to the traditional magic of the cinema? Does it devalue the cinema of the big screen if we are constantly occupied with small cinema in our phones? Can the cinema of the small screen bring our attention back to the big screen? This is something that the Locarno Film Festival is certainly invested in trying to figure out, and that's why it's so active on social media. So this will be interesting to continue to follow, how these different types of cinema coexist. Is it symbiotic? Is it competitive? Do they learn from each other? Do they copy each other? Do we see more social media content in cinema, or as we see more cinema in social media? And this is maybe a good opportunity to say something about the new film by Radu Jude, which I saw yesterday and I think is really fantastic. Do not expect too much of the end of the world. Yeah, because it has a very strong and inspired use of social media from its protagonist, assuming a fake persona to basically perform a completely different version of herself for social media, And to see her do this in certain settings, it becomes a really fascinating study of the different realities that we are inhabiting, and that we are producing cinema every day. We are producing a fiction that other people are consuming, and this is actually transforming our society through like the versions of ourselves that we are addressing each other with. So I think this is actually a very exciting example of taking an evaluation of the different cinemas happening now. And I hope that there are more movies that will continue to follow this example.
It was great. It's also at the same time there is an old movie.
Yes, it's true.
This is so
it's so rich.
Many layers.
Also, filmmaker, do you find time to follow? Because I think it's you are so in charge of all these encounters with all these people. Is there also something a need to come back to your own production, art pieces and films?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm still working on my film, my first feature film, which is a reflection on the contemporary landscape of extremist propaganda and what certain people who were previously involved with confronting ISIS videos are doing now. You know, it's a continuation of a project I did some years ago. And now I'm studying what other people have done and what they have learned from their encounters with extremist propaganda. And it is touching on this larger question of the alternative realities and the truths and fictions that are being produced through digital media and social media networks. So it's related to some of these things that we were just talking about, and they're the topics that I'm interested in doing research. But I guess what's interesting then is to think of like, what does research into ISIS media have to do with Tsai Ming-liang? Or what does it have to do with Radu Jude? And I actually think that there are some very interesting connections that I can make, that it's not an accident that while I'm working on this project about post-ISIS media, I'm wanting to engage with the cinema of Tsai Ming-liang as a kind of shall we say, psychic grounding or psychic navigation device. That there's a restorative energy that I get from Tsai Ming-liang that I can use in my own project of how to look and how to coexist with this very toxic media. And also with Radu Jude, who's in many ways the opposite of Tsai Ming-liang, in that he's so maximalist and has so many things going on, so many ideas and thoughts, that maybe matches my own thought process. So I really admire him a lot. So I'm taking all these elements and just thinking about how can they be digested inside my own mind and produce the film that I think is the best possible way of engaging with this material. So I've been much more conscious about this, and I think it helped that I stopped chasing after the future, which is what I did in my first year. In my first year here in Locarno, it opened me up to so many possibilities and so many inputs and people to encounter that it was a bit overwhelming. And now in the second year, it's really about taking in what I've experienced and really choosing what is really meant for me. So, and I feel much more grounded and much more satisfied with who I'm engaged with and what I'm working on. So, yeah, I guess you can call this a sign of progress.
Great. Thank you. Thank you
right.
very much.
Thank you, Giuseppe. Thank you, Ruth.
You heard Kevin Billy, Locarno Film Festival professor for the future of cinema and audiovisual arts at the Università della Svizzera Italiana. Interview by Giuseppe Di Salvatore and Ruth Bettig. Editing Morgane Frund. A production by Film Explorer.